That's going to do it for us tonight. I'll see you again tomorrow night. Now it's time for The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Good evening, Lawrence. I'm sorry I'm in your real estate.
Oh, no. Good evening, Rachel. I was very glad to see Amy Klobuchar in your hour. I want history to record that Amy Klobuchar was the last presidential candidate to appear on this program at approximately 10:30 p.m. the night before New Hampshire voted. And so I think what we saw was the last word bump, right? I mean, what else is that? What else explains that?
I was going to say you should market it, but it does kind of sound like a weird, like, pregnancy line, you know? Yeah. The last word bump, coffee cup. The last word bump, onesie. Like, it's a little weird.
She did a solid 8 minutes, and I think that might have been it. Rachel, you discussed with Amy Klobuchar this issue that I've heard about on a lot of television talk about politics, the electability of a woman. Does a woman have a particular challenge? And I thought you dealt with that pretty wisely, obviously. That discussion is occurring repeatedly.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I for one, and I don't watch every minute of cable news, but I've not heard one discussion of the electability of a gay man. I have not heard one discussion of the electability of a Jewish man. Why is it that women, and apparently at this point women alone, are left to have to fight for the notion that they can actually win?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what's going on is, I mean, you do hear some discussion about age, for example, and whether or not age is a limiting factor for some of the older candidates in the field. You heard that particularly when there were questions about whether or not Vice President Biden would get in, and whether or not his age might be a limiting factor. And then the rebuttal to that is that there were already candidates like Bernie Sanders who are older than him. I mean, you do hear it about some other demographic factors. But ultimately, it's sort of inescapable because, and Chris Hayes was great on this tonight, the discussion among Democratic voters is inescapably about who can beat Trump. And so every worry that everybody has, every little niggling worry that everybody has about what might be something that might interrupt a person's otherwise promising trajectory to beat Trump ends up open for discussion. And I think if Pete Buttigieg continues to overperform expectations, having done so well in Iowa and New Hampshire, some of those discussions about him being the first openly gay presidential candidate will surface. I mean, every electability conversation is going to have to happen 1,000 times because it's all that Democratic voters are thinking about.
I mean, I hope that those other things that I mentioned, I hope that the good news is that we are really actually as a country past the point where people even care about whether a candidate is Jewish, and we're past the point where a majority of people care whether a candidate is gay. I hope that's the case. I find this discussion about the women's electability to just be maddening. And
the maddening thing about it is that for all of these factors, you never talk to anybody who says, yeah, my issue is that she's a woman. You know, my issue is that he's old, or my issue is that he's gay. You know, it's always worry by proxy. You know, asking for a friend.
Yes, that's right. They're always worried about someone else.
Things, but I'm not. Yeah. That's how you know how disingenuous some of these expressions are. But I think these conversations are just inescapable.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.